My name is Serenity, 22 years old, and I just graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science. Last Monday, I called my parents about graduation arrangements. My father picked up with his typical dismissive tone. "We cannot drive you to the ceremony," he stated flatly. "Take the subway. We are buying your sister a Mercedes." Avelina was only graduating from high school. The familiar burn of injustice spread through my chest. I had felt it for years, like a constant companion. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey from subway rider to someone who made my parents' jaws drop at graduation. Growing up in our massive Boston townhouse, I always felt like a ghost haunting my own home. My father, Cyprian, served as chief technology officer at a major pharmaceutical company. He was calculating, demanding, and viewed emotions as inefficiencies. My mother, Ismani, ran her own successful law firm downtown. She was equally ambitious, but wrapped her coldness in polite smiles. Together, they created an atmosphere where perfection was not rewarded, but merely expected. When I was 5 years old, my sister Avelina entered our world. I still recall the moment they brought her home from the hospital. She had these enormous green eyes and copper-colored curls that seemed to glow under any light. From that instant, the entire household shifted around her. I transformed from being their daughter to being the responsible older child who should know better, the one who should not need attention or guidance. The favoritism began small. For my 9th birthday, I received educational software and a stern reminder about maintaining my grades. 3 months later, Avelina turned 5 and received an elaborate fairy tale party with professional decorators, a 3-tier cake, and actual ponies in our garden. I convinced myself it was because she was younger, more delicate, needed more care. But as time passed, the gap only widened into a canyon. Family trips revolved entirely around Avelina's preferences. When she wanted to visit theme parks, we visited theme parks. When I requested to attend a robotics camp instead of our yearly Martha's Vineyard vacation at 13, my mother barely looked up from her laptop. "Maybe next year, Serenity. This trip is already booked." Next year never materialized. Academic achievements became another battlefield where double standards ruled. I maintained perfect grades, joined robotics club, math Olympiad, and debate team. My report cards received brief nods or comments like, "This is the minimum we expect from you, Serenity." Meanwhile, Avelina would present her B- average and receive celebrations, expensive rewards for tremendous improvement or finding her unique path. By sophomore year of high school, I had internalized the message clearly. I needed to excel beyond excellence just to remain visible. I became president of the coding club, captain of the academic decathlon team, and enrolled in every advanced placement course offered. I studied until 2 or 3 in the morning regularly, sustained by the fading hope that eventually my parents would look at me with the same pride they showed Avelina when she managed to show up for her dance classes. Avelina and I maintained a complex dynamic. I never directly blamed her for our parents' bias. How could I? She was as much a victim of their parenting as I was, just in a different way. But an undeniable chasm existed between us. Avelina grew comfortable with instant gratification. She never developed patience or faced real consequences. When she totaled her brand new BMW at 17, a car she received just for passing her driving test, Cyprian simply purchased her another one within 48 hours. When I had asked for help buying a used Toyota for college, he told me to earn it through my part-time tutoring job. The most crushing memory occurred during my senior year. I had been selected as valedictorian, an achievement representing 4 years of relentless dedication and sacrifice. The ceremony was scheduled for a Thursday evening in June. When I reminded my parents about the date, Ismani sighed dramatically. "Ugh, Serenity. That is the same evening as Avelina's art exhibition. She has been preparing her portfolio for weeks. You understand, do you not?" I nodded mechanically. The disappointment crystallized into something harder and sharper in my chest. I delivered my valedictorian speech to an audience that did not include the two people I most wanted to see. As I stood at that podium discussing perseverance and future possibilities, I searched the crowd for faces that would never appear. That night, I made a resolution. I had secured a full scholarship to MIT, enough to cover everything. My parents had vaguely mentioned helping with incidental expenses, but I decided I would never ask them for a single cent. The summer before college, I worked 3 different jobs. I served coffee at a local cafe from 5 to noon, did data entry at a medical office until 5, and tutored high school students in math and science until 10 at night. I saved every dollar, every tip, every bonus. When September arrived, I packed my life into 2 worn suitcases. My parents seemed genuinely surprised when I declined their offer to drive me to Cambridge. I have arranged everything, I told them, pulling my suitcases toward the door. Ismene glanced up from her phone. Do you have sufficient funds for the semester, Serenity? I nodded. I have been saving all summer. Cyprian barely lifted his eyes from his tablet. College is expensive. Do not waste money on unnecessary things. That was the extent of their farewell. Meanwhile, Avelina was beginning her freshman year of high school with a complete wardrobe from Nordstrom, the latest iPhone, and a promise of a European trip for spring break. The contrast could not have been more glaring, but by then, I had stopped expecting anything different. As I closed the door behind me that September morning, I felt a strange mixture of liberation and abandonment. I was finally going to create a life entirely on my own terms. My first semester at MIT was a brutal reality check. While many classmates focused solely on academics, I was juggling a full course load with 3 part-time jobs. I worked at the university computer lab from 5 to 9 in the morning, delivered food for a local restaurant between classes, and spent weekends doing freelance coding projects I found online. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. Despite coming from a wealthy family, I received 0 financial support. My scholarship covered tuition, but everything else, housing, books, meals, supplies, came from my own earnings. I lived in the smallest dorm room available, survived on instant noodles and cafeteria leftovers, and became an expert at finding events with free food. During those early struggles, I met Linnea, a fellow computer science student who became my closest friend. Linnea came from a working-class family in Detroit and was also financing her own education. We bonded over shared financial struggles and became each other's lifeline. We split textbook costs, cooked cheap meals together in the communal kitchen, and spent studying side by side until dawn. How can your parents not help you at all? Linnea asked one night as we were debugging code at 3 in the morning, especially when they clearly have money. I shrugged, trying to appear indifferent. They believe in self-reliance, I suppose. That is not self-reliance, Linnea replied, her voice sharp with indignation. That is abandonment when they are buying your sister luxury cars and designer clothes. Hearing someone else name the injustice so directly made something crack inside me. For the first time, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my parents' neglect. In my sophomore year, I met Stellan in my advanced algorithms class. He was brilliant, kind, and came from old money in Connecticut. We started dating, and for a brief period I felt seen and valued. Stellan was generous, always offering to cover dinner or buy my textbooks. But my pride made accepting help nearly impossible. I insisted on paying my half, even when it meant working extra shifts that left me exhausted. The relationship strained when Stellan could not understand my situation. Just ask your parents for money, he would say, frustrated when I showed up to dates exhausted from work. Why make everything so difficult? No matter how I explained, He never grasped the reality of having parents who simply did not care. We ended things after 6 months when he surprised me with tickets to a tech conference in Tokyo. When I told him I could not go because I had committed to a coding project deadline, he accused me of not prioritizing our relationship. We ended things that night, adding heartbreak to my mounting challenges. The holidays were especially painful. While other students went home for family celebrations, I often stayed on campus, picking up extra work hours. During my first Thanksgiving at MIT, I called home, hoping for at least a warm conversation. "We miss you, Serenity," Ismeni said, though I could hear distraction in her voice. "We are sitting down for dinner now. Avelina made the most beautiful table arrangement." In the background, I heard laughter, champagne glasses clinking, animated conversation. "I should let you go," I said quietly. "Yes, good idea. Call again soon," she replied, before disconnecting. I spent that Thanksgiving working a double shift at a 24-hour diner, serving turkey dinners to strangers while my own family celebrated without me. The turning point came when I enrolled in Professor Zephyr's cryptocurrency course during junior year. Unlike other professors who barely noticed quiet students, Professor Zephyr recognized something in me. After I submitted a paper proposing a novel approach to blockchain security, he asked me to stay after class. "This is doctoral thinking, Serenity," he said, holding my paper. "Have you considered developing this concept further?" That conversation changed everything. Professor Zephyr became the mentor I desperately needed. He introduced me to industry contacts, recommended research papers, and most importantly, believed in my potential. Under his guidance, I began developing what would become CryptoShield, a revolutionary security protocol for digital transactions. This was early 2020 when cryptocurrency was gaining mainstream attention, but security concerns limited adoption. I identified a critical vulnerability in existing systems and developed an elegant solution. I spent countless hours in the computer lab, coding through nights, refining algorithms, testing protocols. What started as academic curiosity evolved into a concrete business opportunity. Professor Zephyr encouraged me to pursue it seriously. "You have identified a genuine market need," he told me. "This could be transformative if executed properly." For the first time since arriving at MIT, I felt true purpose beyond mere survival. I had discovered something I was passionate about, something that could potentially revolutionize digital finance. And unlike my relationship with my parents, my success in this venture would be entirely mine. The summer before senior year, I lived on campus, dedicating every waking hour to developing CryptoShield. While classmates secured internships at Google or Microsoft, I was building something from nothing in a cramped dorm room. Linnea, despite having her own internship, spent evenings helping me test code and refine the user interface. MIT hosted an annual innovation competition with substantial prize money for promising student ventures. Professor Zephyr insisted I enter. I spent weeks perfecting my presentation, creating demos, anticipating every possible question. The night before the competition, I rehearsed with Linnea for the 20th time. "Serenity, you need rest," she insisted after my 4th consecutive run-through. "You know this technology inside out. You are ready." The competition was intense, with over 200 entries from across the university. When they announced CryptoShield as the winner, I nearly collapsed from shock. The prize was $75,000 in seed funding, plus free access to MIT's startup incubator.
The win attracted immediate attention from venture capitalists. Within a week, I received multiple acquisition offers. One investor, Thaddeus, a successful entrepreneur who had built several fintech companies, offered to buy my concept outright for $3 million. "Take the money," he urged during our meeting. "Finish your degree without financial stress. Let someone with experience handle the execution." $3 million would solve every problem instantly. I could pay off student loans, live comfortably, never work multiple jobs again. But something deep inside refused. I heard myself say, "Thank you, but I'm not selling. I believe in what I'm building."
Thaddeus looked surprised but intrigued. Most students would leap at that offer. "I am not most students," I replied firmly. The next day, Thaddeus called with a different proposal. He wanted to invest $500,000 for a 15% stake in CryptoShield. This time, I accepted. With his investment, I could officially incorporate, hire developers, and accelerate our launch. The following months were the most challenging yet exhilarating of my life. I was still a full-time student, but now also a CEO. I hired two brilliant computer science students, Cassian and Leander, as part-time developers and brought on Muriel, a business student with marketing expertise. We worked from a tiny office in the startup incubator, often coding until 4 or 5 in the morning. There were moments when everything seemed impossible. 2 months after starting, we discovered a critical security flaw that required rewriting 60% of our code base. I did not sleep for 96 hours straight as we raced to fix it. Then Cassian quit unexpectedly, leaving us short-staffed before a crucial investor presentation. Our funds were depleting rapidly, and we were still months from launching. During one particularly dark moment, I called Professor Zephyr, barely holding back tears. "I think I have made a terrible mistake," I confessed. "We are going to run out of money before we even launch." "Every successful entrepreneur faces this moment," he assured me. "The difference is whether you persist or surrender. Which will you choose?" His words strengthened my resolve. I took on more coding myself, worked even longer hours, reached out to every contact for resources. Linnea, despite having no technical background, volunteered to handle administrative tasks on weekends without pay. We survived that crisis through pure determination and sleepless nights. The breakthrough came in March of senior year. We perfected our proprietary security protocol, which processed cryptocurrency transactions 40% faster than any existing platform, while maintaining military-grade encryption. When we demonstrated the technology to Thaddeus, he immediately recognized its potential. "This changes the entire landscape," he said, watching our demonstration. "How quickly can you prepare for Series A funding?" With Thaddeus's connections, we secured meetings with top venture capital firms in Boston and Silicon Valley. The timing was perfect. Cryptocurrency was experiencing renewed interest after several high-profile security breaches at competitors. After an exhausting month of pitches and negotiations, we closed a funding round of $60 million at a company valuation of $800 million. The investment news spread through tech and finance circles, but I maintained a low profile. I gave no interviews, made no public statements. Most importantly, I told my family nothing. Part of me wanted to prove I could succeed entirely alone. Another part wanted to see their faces when they discovered what I had built while they lavished attention on Avelina. By graduation time, CryptoShield had grown to 40 employees. We had launched our platform to select enterprise clients and were receiving extraordinary feedback. Our valuation had crossed $1 billion, officially making us a unicorn and me, at 22, a billionaire on paper. Despite these developments, I maintained my normal routine at MIT, completing coursework and preparing for graduation. Only a handful of people knew about CryptoShield's success, and I preferred it that way. Professor Zephyr could barely contain his pride during our final meeting. "Forbes is preparing their 30 under 30 list," he mentioned. "I may have submitted your name." I laughed, but secretly felt proud of what I had accomplished. Against all odds, without family support or connections, I had built something valuable. The validation I had sought from my parents for years had finally come,
but from an entirely different source, from within myself. As May approached bringing graduation, I experienced complicated emotions. Pride in completing my degree while building a billion-dollar company mixed with lingering desire for my family to witness this milestone. Despite years of neglect, some part of me still wanted them to see me succeed. 3 weeks before graduation, I sent formal invitations to Cyprian, Ismene, and Avelina. I included ceremony tickets and a handwritten note expressing how much their presence would mean. Then I waited, checking my phone constantly, hoping for enthusiasm that never came. The call finally arrived Tuesday evening as I left the CryptoShield office. Seeing Cyprian's name made my stomach tighten. "Hello, Dad," I answered, keeping my voice steady. "Serenity," he acknowledged in his typical cold tone. "We received your graduation invitation." "Yes," I said, waiting for congratulations that never came. "I hope you can attend." There was a pause. I heard Ismene's voice in the background asking who was calling. "It is Serenity," Cyprian told her before returning to our conversation. "About the graduation, we have a scheduling conflict." My heart sunk. What kind of conflict? Avelina's high school graduation is the same week, and we have multiple celebrations planned. The timing simply doesn't work for driving to Cambridge. I swallowed hard. Her graduation is Thursday. Mine is Saturday. You could attend both. Well, we are also taking her shopping in New York that weekend as her graduation gift. The plans have been set for months. I gripped my phone tighter. I sent invitations as soon as they were available. This is my MIT graduation. It is significant. "Of course it is," he said, his tone softening marginally. "We're very proud. You've always been self-sufficient. I'm sure you'll manage this alone too." Then he delivered the line that would haunt me forever. "You'll have to take the subway to your ceremony. We're buying Avelina a Mercedes for her graduation present." I nearly dropped my phone. "A Mercedes? She's 18 years old." "She's worked very hard," Cyprian defended. "She got into Berkeley. We want to reward her accomplishment." The irony was absurd. Avelina had gotten into Berkeley with a 3.2 GPA and legacy advantage because Ismene was an alumna. Meanwhile, I had graduated valedictorian, gotten into MIT on merit, maintained a perfect 4.0 while building a company, all without their support. "I see," was all I managed. "You've always been the responsible one, Serenity," Ismene chimed in, apparently now on speakerphone. "We never worry about you." Their words, meant as compliments, felt like condemnation for years of conditional love. I had been punished with indifference from my competence, while Avelina was rewarded lavishly for mediocrity.
After hanging up, I stood frozen on the sidewalk outside my office building. Linnea found me there 10 minutes later, still staring at my phone. "What happened?" she asked, immediately recognizing my expression. I recounted the conversation, my voice hollow. "They are buying Avelina a Mercedes for getting into college. A Mercedes, Linnea. And they cannot even drive 2 hours to see me graduate from MIT?" Linnea wrapped her arm around me. "They do not deserve to be there anyway. We are your family now. All of us at CryptoShield, Professor Zephyr, me, we will be cheering louder than anyone when you walk across that stage." Later that night, Professor Zephyr called to check on my graduation plans. When I told him about my parents' decision, he was uncharacteristically direct. "Some people are incapable of celebrating others' success because it highlights their own inadequacies," he said. "Do not let their absence diminish your achievement." Despite the support from my chosen family, the rejection stung deeply. I decided I would indeed take the subway to my graduation ceremony, as Cyprian had suggested. There was poetic justice in arriving by public transportation to receive my MIT diploma, then returning to my office as CEO of a billion-dollar company while Avelina cruised around California in her new Mercedes. 2 days before graduation, I received an unexpected email from the dean of MIT, requesting an urgent meeting.
Concerned about my degree status, I went immediately. Miss Serenity, Dean Malachi greeted me warmly. Thank you for coming on short notice. Is everything all right with my graduation? I asked anxiously. He smiled. More than all right. I just received notification from Forbes magazine. You have been selected for their 30 under 30 list, but more significantly, they are featuring you as the youngest self-made female billionaire in the technology sector. I blinked, surprised the news had broken. I had hoped to keep it private longer. I understand your desire for privacy, he continued, but this is an extraordinary achievement that brings tremendous prestige to MIT. With your permission, we would like to acknowledge this accomplishment during the graduation ceremony. My initial instinct was to decline. I had grown accustomed to succeeding quietly. Then I thought about my parents, unaware of what I had built, ready to leave immediately after the ceremony to celebrate Avelina. What exactly did you have in mind? I asked. Just a brief mention during your introduction as class valedictorian, nothing uncomfortable. I considered momentarily, then nodded. That would be fine. As I left his office, I received a text from Avelina. Surprise! Mom and Dad decided we can come to your graduation after all. See you Saturday. I stared at the message, complex emotions rising. After everything, they had changed their minds. But I knew it was not because they suddenly realized the importance of my graduation. Something else had motivated this reversal, though I could not imagine what. Whatever the reason, I was about to find out. Graduation day arrived clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect May morning that makes Cambridge look magical. I stood before my mirror, carefully adjusting my cap, smoothing the gown over my dress. Despite knowing my parents would attend, I kept my original plan to take the subway. It felt important somehow, a reminder of the journey I had made alone. The subway car was nearly empty that early Saturday. I sat by the window, watching familiar streets pass, reflecting on how far I had come since arriving as a frightened freshman 4 years earlier. My phone buzzed with congratulations from my CryptoShield team, along with one from Linnea saying she had saved front row seats for herself and Professor Zephyr. When I arrived at Killian Court, the transformation was stunning. Rows of white chairs covered the lawn, MIT banners hung everywhere, the great dome gleaming in morning sunlight. Families were already gathering, taking photos, embracing graduates. I scanned the growing crowd, wondering if my family had arrived. I spotted them near registration, Cyprian in his standard navy suit, Ismene elegant in cream-colored dress, Avelina looking bored while scrolling through her phone. They had not noticed me yet, giving me a moment to observe them. They looked exactly as always, yet somehow I felt like a completely different person viewing them through transformed eyes. Taking a deep breath, I approached. "You made it," I said. Ismene turned, her face displaying practiced warmth. "Serenity, look at you, all ready for graduation." She leaned in for a brief hug, her expensive perfume momentarily overwhelming. Cyprian offered a handshake instead of embrace. Traffic was better than expected. Your mother insisted we leave early. Avelina finally looked up from her phone. "Congrats, sis. Can you believe they woke me at 5 in the morning for this?" "I appreciate you coming," I said, meaning it despite everything. Some small part remained that little girl desperate for their approval. "We wouldn't miss it," Ismene said, though we both knew that had been exactly their plan until recently. I wondered again what had changed their minds. Our awkward reunion was interrupted by an announcement asking graduates to gather for processional. "I need to line up. There are reserved seats for family in the 3rd row." As I walked away, I heard Avelina ask, "Do we really have to stay for the whole thing?" The ceremony began with all the tradition MIT is famous for. We marched to pomp and circumstance, took our seats under warm sun, listened to opening remarks from university officials. As valedictorian, I would give a short speech after receiving my diploma, something I had prepared weeks ago, but revised significantly the last night. Dean Malachi approached the podium for conferring degrees. Computer science graduates were called first, with special recognition for highest honors. When my turn came, I rose and made my way to stage, conscious of hundreds of eyes following me. Serenity. Graduating summa cum laude with highest distinction in computer science and engineering. I crossed to center stage, shook his hand, accepted my diploma. I expected him to continue with the next name, but instead, he held the microphone and added, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have the extraordinary privilege of announcing that Serenity is not only our class valedictorian, but has recently been recognized by Forbes magazine as the youngest self-made female billionaire in this year's graduating class, having founded CryptoShield, a financial technology company revolutionizing cryptocurrency security." A collective gasp rose from the audience, followed by thunderous applause. I risked a glance towards my family. Cyprian had literally dropped his program, pages scattering at his feet. Ismini sat frozen, hand covering her mouth. Avelina stared at me with jaw dropped, for once completely disconnected from her phone.
Dean Malachi gestured for me to take the podium for my valedictorian address. As the applause continued, I adjusted the microphone and unfolded my speech. Looking out at the sea of faces, I spotted Linnea and Professor Zephyr beaming with pride in the front row. My family remained stunned in their seats. Cyprian now bent over, retrieving his fallen program with shaking hands. 4 years ago, I began. Many of us arrived at MIT with dreams, ambitions, and more than a little fear of the unknown. We came from different backgrounds with different resources and support systems, but we shared a common goal: to learn, to grow, and ultimately to make our mark on the world. I continued with my prepared remarks about perseverance, innovation, and finding purpose. I spoke about the importance of self-belief when faced with obstacles. At no point did I directly reference my parents' neglect or the struggles I had endured. This moment was about celebration, not retribution. Success is not measured by the recognition we receive or the wealth we accumulate, I said near the conclusion, but by the obstacles we overcome and the person we become in the process. Every one of us graduating today has a unique story of challenges faced and conquered. Mine involved building a company between classes and discovering I was capable of far more than I had been led to believe. As I finished to thunderous applause, I saw my classmates rising to their feet. Many had no idea until today about CryptoShield, having known me only as the quiet, hardworking student always in the computer lab. Their faces showed not just celebration, but newfound respect. I returned to my seat, heart pounding. For the remainder of the ceremony, I felt oddly detached, as if watching from a distance. When the final graduate received their diploma and closing remarks concluded, we tossed our caps into the air with collective joy. In that moment, surrounded by falling caps and celebrating peers, I felt a sense of completion that had nothing to do with my family's presence or approval. As graduates and families began mingling on the lawn, I was immediately surrounded by classmates offering congratulations and asking questions about CryptoShield. Professors I had studied under came to shake my hand, some admitting they had no idea I had been building a billion-dollar company while acing their courses. Dean Malachi introduced me to several important alumni donors. Through the crowd, I could see my family attempting to approach me. Cyprian looked determined, pushing past other families with uncharacteristic urgency. Esmeen followed in his wake, her expression mixing confusion and calculation. Avelina trailed behind, for once looking at me with something resembling genuine admiration. I excused myself from a conversation with a venture capitalist and turned to face them, unsure what to expect but feeling strangely calm. Whatever happened next, I knew I would be okay. I had proven that to myself beyond any doubt. As my parents finally reached me, the contrast between our last phone conversation and their current demeanor could not have been more dramatic.
Cyprian, who had dismissively told me to take the subway just days earlier, now extended his arms for an embrace with a broad smile I had rarely seen directed at me. "Serenity!" he exclaimed, loud enough for others to hear. "Why did you not tell us about your company? $1 billion valuation? This is extraordinary." I accepted his hug stiffly, noting how different it felt from Linnea's genuine embrace or Professor Zephyr's proud handshake earlier. "It never seemed relevant to our conversations," I replied evenly. "You were always focused on Avelina's accomplishments." Esmeen stepped forward next, her social smile firmly in place. "Darling, we are so proud of you. A billionaire at 22, you must tell us everything about this company." The sudden interest was jarring after years of indifference. I could almost see calculations happening behind their eyes, the rapid recalibration of my value in their estimation. "CryptoShield has been my focus for the past 2 years," I explained, keeping my tone professional. "We have developed technology that makes crypto transactions both faster and more secure, addressing concerns that have limited mainstream adoption." 2 years, Cyprian repeated. "You have been working on this while completing your degree? Why did you not ask for my help? I have considerable financial experience that could have benefited you." The question struck me as so tone-deaf, I almost laughed. "I did not think you would be interested. You made it clear I was expected to handle my education independently." Several classmates were still hovering nearby, clearly intrigued by the family dynamics playing out. I spotted Linnea making her way towards us, her expression concerned. She had heard enough stories to recognize when I might need backup. "Mr. and Mrs. Cyprian and Esmeen, I am Linnea, Serenity's friend and now Chief Operating Officer at CryptoShield. Your daughter is the most brilliant person I have ever met. You must be thrilled to have raised such an innovator." Cyprian shook her hand automatically, his business instincts taking over. "Of course, very pleased. Our family has always valued excellence." Avelina, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "Is it true what they said? You are actually a billionaire now?" There was no jealousy in her question, just genuine curiosity and perhaps hint of awe. For the first time, I wondered if Avelina had been as trapped in our parents' dynamics as I had been, cast in the role of indulged favorite just as I had been cast in the overlooked achiever. On paper, yes, the company is valued at just over $1 billion, and I retain majority ownership. "That is incredible," she said simply. "I always knew you were smart, but this is next level." Her straightforward admiration felt more genuine than our parents' effusive praise. I found myself smiling at her, a real smile this time. Cyprian cleared his throat. "We should celebrate this momentous occasion. I have made reservations at L'Espalier for dinner. The 4 of us can catch up properly, and you can tell us all about your business plans." I noticed the swift change in his phrasing. What had started as my graduation celebration had instantly transformed into a business discussion once he learned of my success. The restaurant he mentioned was one of the most expensive in Boston, the type of place he had never offered to take me before. "Actually, I already have plans this evening. My team has arranged a graduation party." "Surely you can reschedule with your employees," Esmeen suggested, her tone making it clear she considered this the obvious solution. Family comes first, after all. The irony of her statement was breathtaking. These people are not just my employees. They are the ones who supported me every step of the way. They were there when I needed help, guidance, or just someone to believe in me. So no, I will not be rescheduling. Cyprian's expression hardened slightly, the familiar look of disapproval returning. "Serenity, I think you are being unreasonable. We have come all this way to celebrate with you." "You came because Avelina convinced you to attend," I corrected him. "Let us not pretend otherwise." Avelina looked up from her phone. Actually, I was the one who convinced them to come after I saw the article about you in TechCrunch last week. They had no idea. I turned to her in surprise. You saw an article about CryptoShield? She nodded. I follow tech news. When I saw your name and photo, I showed them immediately. Dad did not believe it was really you until he looked up the company website and saw you listed as founder and CEO. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. My parents had not had a change of heart about my graduation. They had discovered my success and immediately recognized the potential advantage of being associated with it. The realization was both painful and oddly liberating. I appreciate you encouraging them to come, Evelina, I said sincerely. Cyprian, apparently unwilling to let the dinner idea go, tried again. We have much to discuss about your future, Serenity. As your father, I can offer valuable insights about managing wealth and business growth. Perhaps we could join your celebration briefly, then have our family dinner afterward. I looked at him directly, seeing clearly for perhaps the first time the insecurity behind his controlling nature. Dad, I have been managing just fine without your insights for 4 years. My company has excellent financial advisors, a strong board, and dedicated team members. What I wanted today was simply for my family to be proud of me graduating from MIT. Not for what I have built or how much money I have made, but just for completing this chapter of my education. Ismeni placed a restraining hand on Cyprian's arm as he began to respond. Of course we are proud of your graduation, Serenity, she said smoothly. The business success is just an added bonus. Is it? I asked quietly. Because when it was just MIT graduation, you were planning to skip it entirely for a shopping trip to New York. An uncomfortable silence fell over our group. Several nearby families had stopped pretending not to listen. Avelina unexpectedly broke the tension. Can I come to your party instead of going to dinner with Mom and Dad? I want to hear more about your company. And honestly, I am tired of being the center of attention all the time. It is exhausting living up to their expectations. Her candid admission surprised me. Perhaps there was more awareness in my sister than I'd given her credit for. You are welcome to join us, I told her. Linnea, Professor Zephyr, and the CryptoShield team would love to meet you. Cyprian frowned. Avelina, we had plans as a family. For perhaps the first time in her life, my sister stood her ground against her parents. I want to spend time with Serenity. You two can go to dinner without us. Ismeni looked between us, clearly calculating the social implications of the situation. Perhaps we could all attend Serenity's celebration as a family. I shook my head. I think it is better if we have some space right now. This is a lot to process for everyone. Avelina is welcome to join my celebration if she wants, but I am not ready to pretend everything is suddenly fine between us just because you have discovered I'm successful. Her face flushed with anger. After everything we have done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Dad? I asked quietly. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I built my company without a dollar of your money or a word of your advice. I took the subway to my graduation ceremony today, just like you suggested. He had no response to that, just tightened his jaw in the way I had seen countless times growing up. I should go, I said, spotting more of my team arriving at the edge of the lawn. My guests are waiting. Avelina, we'll be at the Liberty Hotel rooftop if you want to join us later. As I turned to leave, Ismeni called after me. Serenity, we are still your parents. We deserve to be part of your success. I paused and looked back at them. You can be part of my life going forward if you want to, but it will have to be on different terms. I am not that desperate little girl seeking your approval anymore. I know my own worth now. With those words, I walked away to join the people who had truly supported me, leaving my parents standing among the dispersing crowd, for once watching me walk away instead of the other way around. The celebration at the Liberty Hotel rooftop was everything I could have hoped for. The CryptoShield team had decorated the space with MIT colors and congratulations banners. As the sun set over Boston, painting the skyline in brilliant oranges and purples, I found myself surrounded by genuine warmth and affection. Professor Zephyr raised a toast to serenity, who proves that brilliance combined with determination can overcome any obstacle. To the best CEO anyone could ask for, and more importantly, the best friend. As glasses clinked around me, I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from overwhelming gratitude for these people who had become my chosen family. Halfway through the evening, Avelina appeared at the rooftop entrance, looking uncertain. She had changed from her formal dress into jeans and a simple top, making her look younger and more vulnerable than usual. "You came," I said, approaching her with genuine warmth. "I took the subway," she said with a small smile. "Wanted to see what all the fuss was about." I laughed, a real laugh this time. "Come meet everyone." I introduced Avelina to my team and watched as she listened with genuine interest to Cassian explaining our technology, to Marielle discussing our marketing strategy. For the first time, I saw my sister as more than just the favorite child. I saw a young woman trying to find her own identity outside our parents' suffocating expectations. Later, as we stood together looking out over the city lights, Avelina spoke quietly. "I'm sorry, Serenity, for all of it. I knew they treated us differently, but I never realized how much it hurt you until today." "It was not your fault," I told her honestly. "We were both trapped in roles they assigned us." "Maybe," she said, "but I benefited while you suffered. That was not fair." "No," I agreed, "it was not. But we can choose differently now."
She nodded, then surprised me by asking, "Could I intern at CryptoShield this summer? I want to learn what it is like to actually work for something." "You would have to apply like everyone else," I warned. "No special treatment." "Good," she said firmly. "I want to earn it." As the party continued around us, I realized this moment, standing with my sister as equals for the first time, surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, meant more than any amount of money or recognition. The next morning, I woke in my dorm room for the last time. Boxes were packed, ready for the move to my new apartment in Boston's financial district. As I checked my phone, I found several messages from Cyprian and Ismini, ranging from conciliatory to demanding, all essentially asking for a meeting to discuss my responsibilities to the family. I deleted them without responding. Instead, I focused on a message from Thaddeus, my first investor. "Congratulations on graduation. Business Week wants to do a cover story on CryptoShield. Interested?" 6 months ago, I would have declined, preferring to remain invisible. But now I realize my story might help other overlooked students believe in themselves. "Yes," I typed back. "Let us do it." 3 months after graduation, the Business Week article was published with the headline, "The Billion-Dollar Surprise: How Serenity Built CryptoShield While Her Parents Looked Away." The journalist had done thorough research, interviewing Professor Zephyr, Linnea, and several MIT classmates. The article painted a picture of determination over adversity without being cruel to my parents, though the facts spoke for themselves. The morning the article went live, Cyprian called 18 times. I finally answered on the 19th. "This article makes us look terrible," he said without preamble. "The article tells the truth," I replied calmly. "You could have asked them not to mention the family dynamics." "Why would I do that? My story is about succeeding despite those dynamics." There was a long pause. Then, for the first time I could remember, Cyprian's voice cracked slightly. "We made mistakes, Serenity. We see that now." "Do you?" I asked. "Or do you just see a missed opportunity to be associated with my success?" "That is unfair." "Is it? When you thought I was just another MIT graduate, you could not be botted to attend my ceremony.
the moment you learned about CryptoShield, suddenly I became worthy of your attention? We are trying to make amends, he said stiffly. Then start by acknowledging what you did, not just the consequences. Avelina and I both deserved better. I heard Ismini's voice in the background. Then Cyprian said, "Your mother wants to speak with you." Serenity, we understand you are upset, but publicly airing family matters is inappropriate. More inappropriate than neglecting one child while spoiling another? She sighed. We did what we thought was best. You were so capable, so independent. Avelina needed more support. No, I corrected. You decided I did not deserve support because I was strong. You punished me for being strong and rewarded Avelina for being dependent. Neither approach was healthy. We want to fix this, she said, though her tone suggested she wanted to manage the situation more than genuinely repair it. Then start with Avelina. She's deferring Berkeley. Did you tell her? She wants to figure out who she is without your expectations. Support that decision. That is ridiculous. Berkeley is an excellent school that she only applied to because you insisted, just like the Mercedes she didn't want, just like the constant pressure to be your perfect princess while I was ignored for being too competent. I heard muffled discussion, then Ismini returned. We will consider what you have said. Good. And Ismini, Avelina is interning at CryptoShield this summer. She earned the position fair and square. I expect you to be proud of her for that, not disappointed she's not doing something more prestigious. After ending the call, I felt lighter somehow, not reconciled with my parents, but no longer carrying the weight of their approval or disapproval. CryptoShield continued its explosive growth. By 6 months post-graduation, we had expanded to 300 employees and opened offices in London, Tokyo, and Singapore. Our platform processed over $1 billion in transactions daily, and our company valuation had reached $5 billion. But the success that meant the most to me was the Serenity Foundation, which I established with 10% of my equity. The foundation provided full scholarships, living expenses, and mentorship to students from neglectful or abusive family situations. Each recipient received not only financial support, but also the message that someone believed in them. Avelina thrived in her internship, working in our user experience department. She had natural instincts for design and understanding customer needs, skills our parents never bothered to discover because they were too busy molding her into their vision. One evening, as we worked late in the office, she said, "You know what I realize? They never really saw either of us. They saw the roles they created, the responsible one and the precious one, but never Serenity and Avelina as we actually are." When did you become so insightful? I asked, impressed by her growth. She replied, when I finally had space to think for myself. You gave me that. A year after graduation, on the anniversary of that subway ride to MIT, I stood in my new office overlooking Boston Harbor. The walls displayed not family photos, but images of the CryptoShield team, the scholarship recipients, the people who had become my true family. My desk held a framed photo from graduation day, not of my parents, but of Linnea, Professor Zephyr, and my team surrounding me with genuine joy. Next to it sat a newer photo, Avelina and I at her internship completion ceremony, both smiling genuinely, finally sisters in truth rather than just blood. Cyprian and Ismene had slowly, grudgingly, begun to acknowledge their mistakes. They attended therapy at Avelina's insistence. Progress was slow, and I maintained firm boundaries, but there was hope for some form of relationship, one based on truth rather than pretense. The real transformation, however, was not in my family relationships, but in how I viewed myself. The desperate need for parental validation that had driven me for 22 years had finally quieted. I had learned that self-worth could not be granted by others. It had to be claimed from within.
One afternoon, as I reviewed quarterly reports showing CryptoShield had crossed $10 billion in valuation, my assistant knocked. "Serenity, there is someone here to see you. Says she's from your high school." Curious, I agreed to the meeting. A woman in her 50s entered, whom I vaguely recognized as Mrs. Rowena, my high school guidance counselor. "Serenity," she said warmly. "I hope you do not mind the unexpected visit. I was in Boston for a conference and had to see you." "Mrs. Rowena," I said, surprised. "Please, sit. What brings you here?" She pulled out a worn folder from her bag. "I have carried this for 5 years. It is your college recommendation letter file. But more importantly, it contains something I wrote but never sent." She handed me a letter dated my senior year of high school. I read, "To the parents of Serenity, I am writing to express concern about the emotional neglect your daughter faces. Despite her exceptional achievements, she receives minimal recognition at home. I have observed the stark difference in how you treat your daughters. Serenity deserves the same support and celebration you give Avelina. Her strength should not disqualify her from parental love." I looked up, tears threatening. "You saw it." "Everyone at school saw it," she said gently. "The teachers, the staff, we all noticed how you came to events alone, while Avelina had both parents for every recital. We saw you working multiple jobs while she got everything handed to her." "Why did you not send this?" I asked. "Your father was a major donor to the school. The administration forbade it, but I kept it, promising myself that one day I would apologize for not fighting harder for you." "You have nothing to apologize for," I told her. "Knowing someone saw, someone cared, that means everything." After she left, I sat with that letter for a long time. Validation had come from unexpected sources throughout my journey. Professor Zephyr, Linnea, Mrs. Rowena, the people who mattered had seen me all along. That evening, I attended a charity gala for young entrepreneurs. CryptoShields was a major sponsor, and I was giving the keynote speech. As I prepared backstage, I was surprised to see Cyprian and Ismini in the audience. I had not invited them. Avelina appeared beside me. "I told them about it," she admitted. "Not for you, for them. They need to see who you really are, not who they imagined." During my speech, I talked about my journey, the 3 jobs, the sleepless nights, the choice between a $3 million buyout or believing in myself. I spoke about the importance of chosen family and mentors who see potential when biological family cannot. Success is not about proving wrong those who doubted you. It is about proving right those who believed in you, especially when that person is yourself. The audience gave a standing ovation. I saw Cyprian and Ismini rising with them, and for the first time, I detected something like genuine understanding in their eyes. Not the calculated interest of a year ago, but perhaps the beginning of actually seeing me. Afterwards, they approached carefully, aware they were on my territory now. "That was powerful," Cyprian said quietly. "I had no idea about the 3 jobs or the buyout offer you refused." "There was a lot you do not know about me," I replied. "That is what happens when you don't pay attention for 22 years. "We would like to learn," Ismini said, and for once, she sounded like a mother rather than a lawyer. "If you will let us." "We will see. Trust takes time to rebuild, but I trust Avelina's judgment." Evelina smiled, linking her arm through mine. "We are both different now, all of us. Maybe different can be better." 2 years after graduation, CryptoShield went public. The IPO valued the company at $50 billion.
making me, at 24, one of the youngest female billionaires in history. The bell-ringing ceremony at the New York Stock Exchange was surreal. Cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions, the weight of the moment almost overwhelming. But what mattered was who stood with me on that platform. Linnea, now Chief Operating Officer and my closest friend. Professor Zephyr, Chairman of our advisory board. Thaddeus, the first investor who believed in me. My entire founding team. And yes, Avelina was there too, now a full-time employee after graduating early from Berkeley, a path she chose for herself. Even Cyprian and Ismini attended, though they stood in the background, finally understanding their place in my story was supportive, not central. As I rang the bell, I thought about that girl taking the subway to graduation, feeling alone and unseen. She had no idea that her isolation would become her strength, that being forced to rely on herself would teach her to build something extraordinary. The Forbes interview that followed was telling. When asked about my success factors, I said, "My parents taught me the most valuable lesson possible, though not intentionally. They taught me that waiting for external validation is futile. When you know your worth, you don't need others to confirm it." The interviewer asked if I had reconciled with my family. I answered, "We are building something new. Not reconciliation exactly, but recognition. They're learning to see me, and I am learning to see them as flawed humans rather than the omnipotent judges I once believed them to be." The Serenity Foundation had grown to support 500 students annually. Each received not just financial support, but mentorship, therapy resources, and most importantly, the message that their worth was not determined by their family's recognition. At the Foundation's annual gala, I met Zafira, a scholarship recipient whose story echoed mine. Overlooked older sister, favored younger sibling, parents who mistook competence for not needing love. She was building a biotech startup while completing her degree at Stanford. "Your story saved me," she said, tears flowing. Knowing someone else survived and thrived, that kept me going. "You saved yourself," I corrected. "I just showed you it was possible."
The transformation in my relationship with Cyprian and Ismene happened slowly, measured in small moments rather than grand gestures. They started attending therapy individually and as a couple. Ismene later told me their therapist had asked them a simple question that shattered their worldview. Why did you assume Serenity did not need love just because she was capable? They had no answer. 3 years after graduation, we attempted our first real family dinner, not at an expensive restaurant to impress anyone, but at Avelina's small apartment. She cooked, insisting on doing everything herself despite never having made a full meal before. The pasta was overcooked, the sauce too salty, but it was the most honest meal we had ever shared as a family. "I have been thinking," Cyprian said, pushing slightly mushy spaghetti around his plate, "about your 8th birthday, Serenity. You asked for a telescope. We got you educational software instead." I was surprised he remembered. "You said stargazing was impractical." "I was wrong," he said simply. "You wanted to dream, and I gave you obligations." It was the first genuine apology I had received from him, without qualification or excuse. Ismene added quietly, "We measured success by achievement and thought you were succeeding because of your grades and awards. We never considered you might be drowning." I was drowning, but I learned to swim. The question is, whether we can learn to be a family now, knowing what we know. "I would like to try," Cyprian said. "Not for your money or connections, just to know my daughter." The sincerity in his voice was unfamiliar but genuine. Perhaps people could change, given enough time and motivation. Crypto Shield's success had opened doors I never imagined. I was invited to speak at the United Nations about financial inclusion through technology. World leaders sought my opinion on cryptocurrency regulation. Universities offered honorary degrees. But the moment that meant the most came unexpectedly. I was visiting MIT to establish a scholarship fund when I encountered a familiar scene. A young woman, perhaps 19, sitting alone outside the financial aid office, crying quietly. Her worn backpack and exhausted expression reminded me of myself 5 years earlier. "Are you okay?" I asked, sitting beside her. She looked up, clearly not recognizing me. "My parents just told me they will not help with tuition anymore. They are paying for my brother's wedding instead. They said I'm smart enough to figure it out myself." The familiar sting of that logic made my chest tighten. "What is your name?" "Thessaly," she said, wiping her eyes. "Thessaly, I'm going to tell you something important. Their decision says nothing about your worth and everything about their limitations. You will figure it out, not because you have to, but because you are capable of more than they can imagine." I handed her my business card. "Email me. The Serenity Foundation has a scholarship for students exactly like you." Her eyes widened as she read the card. "You are Serenity? The Crypto Shield founder?" "I am someone who sat where you are sitting, feeling what you are feeling, and I promise it gets better." 6 months later, Thessaly stood on stage at our foundation gala, announcing she had not only secured the scholarship, but also started her own AI research project. Her parents were not in the audience, but she did not scan the crowd for them. She had learned, as I had, that the only approval that matters comes from within. The 5th anniversary of my MIT graduation arrived with unexpected reflection. Crypto Shield had grown beyond my wildest dreams. 10,000 employees, offices in 20 countries, a market capitalization approaching $100 billion. But sitting in my office that morning, what struck me was not the magnitude of success, but the journey it represented. Avelina called early that morning. "5 years ago today, you took the subway to graduation. I have been thinking about that a lot." "Why?" I asked. "Because that subway ride represents everything wrong with how we grew up, but also everything right about who you became. You did not need them to drive you. You never did." She was right. The isolation that had felt like punishment had become power. The neglect that seemed cruel had forged resilience. Not that I would wish that journey on anyone, hence the foundation, but I could finally see the strength it had created. That afternoon, a package arrived with no return address. Inside was an antique telescope, beautifully restored, with a note. "For the 8-year-old who wanted to see the stars. With love and regret, Dad." I set it up in my office, pointing toward the harbor. That evening, as stars emerged over Boston, I thought about 8-year-old Serenity, desperate for her parents to see her dreams as valuable. She could have never imagined this moment. Successful beyond measure, surrounded by chosen family, finally receiving the telescope that had once seemed so important. But here was the truth. I no longer needed it. The telescope was a beautiful gesture, but it could not undo the past or create the childhood I deserved. What it could do was remind me that people can grow, change, and eventually see what they missed. My phone buzzed with a text from Linnea. "Team dinner tonight. Your presence required. No working late." I smiled, closing my laptop. My real family was waiting. The people who had seen my worth when I could not, who believed in my dreams when they were just code on a screen, who celebrated my successes and supported me through failures. As I left the office, I paused at the telescope, running my fingers along its brass fittings. Tomorrow, I would donate it to the foundation for a young dreamer who needed to know their dreams mattered, even if their parents could not see it. The subway ride to the restaurant felt different from that graduation journey 5 years ago. Then I had been alone, unseen, taking public transportation to the biggest day of my life because my parents could not be bothered. Now I chose the subway because I liked the reminder of where I came from.
Each stop represented a step in my journey, from neglected daughter to self-made billionaire, from desperate for approval to self-assured leader, from alone to surrounded by chosen family. As I entered the restaurant, I found my team already gathered around a large table. Linnea had decorated it with photos from our journey, from the tiny incubator office to the IPO bell ringing. Cassian and Leander were debating our latest security protocol, while Murray showed Avelina mock-ups for our new campaign. Finally, Linnea called out, the workaholic graces us with her presence. I was admiring a telescope, I said, taking my seat between her and Avelina. The one Cyprian sent? Avelina asked. She had helped him find it, she later admitted, searching antique shops for months to find one from the year I turned 8. It is a beautiful gesture, I acknowledged. But, Linnea prompted, knowing me too well. But gestures cannot rewrite history. They can only influence the future. Professor Zephyr, who had joined us for the anniversary dinner, raised his glass. To futures influenced by the past, but not imprisoned by it. We toasted, and conversation flowed naturally. These people knew my story, my struggles, my victories. They had witnessed my transformation from that desperate girl seeking approval to a leader who had found her own worth. Halfway through dinner, my phone buzzed with a video message from Thessaly. She was at her own celebration, having just secured her first patent for an AI innovation. Thank you for seeing me when I could not see myself, she said into the camera, surrounded by friends. I showed the message to the table. This, I said, is why we do what we do. Speaking of which, Murray announced, the foundation received its largest donation today, anonymous but substantial enough to find 200 additional scholarships. I knew immediately who it was from. Cyprian had been quietly liquidating some of his investments, telling Ismani he wanted to correct imbalances. This was his way of acknowledging the harm while trying to prevent others from experiencing it. Good, I said simply. 200 more students who will not have to choose between education and survival. As dinner concluded, Avelina pulled me aside. I have been accepted to Harvard Business School, she said quietly. Full scholarship through the foundation. You earned that on merit, I assured her. The foundation has anonymous review. I did not even know you had applied. I know, she said. That is why it matters. For the first time, I achieved something entirely on my own. We hugged, and I felt the last residue of resentment dissolve. We were no longer the overlooked achiever and the spoiled favorite. We were sisters who had both broken free from the roles assigned to us. Walking home that night, I chose to walk through campus rather than taking the direct route. The buildings where I had spent countless sleepless nights now bore plaques acknowledging CryptoShield's donations. The computer lab where I built my first prototype was now the Serenity Innovation Center. But what struck me most was seeing current students through the windows, coding late into the night, pursuing their own dreams. Some undoubtedly came from supportive families. Others, like I had been, were probably working multiple jobs, fighting for every opportunity, wondering if they would ever be enough. For them, I had established not just scholarships, but mentorship programs, emergency funds, and most importantly, a network of support. No student at MIT would have to feel as alone as I had felt, not if I could help it. As I reached my apartment, I found an unexpected visitor waiting, Mrs. Rowena, my high school counselor, now retired. I hope you don't mind. I was in town and wanted to give this to you in person. She handed me a thick folder. Inside were letters from teachers, janitors, cafeteria workers, everyone from my high school who had noticed my struggle and wanted to tell me they had seen me, had cared, but had not known how to help. We all failed you in different ways, but we also all watched you succeed despite that failure. You became who you are not because of us, but in spite of us. That is the most remarkable thing I have witnessed in 40 years of education. I read through the letters that night, tears flowing freely. The PE teacher who noticed I wore the same shoes for 4 years while Avelina got new ones each season. The librarian who saw me studying alone during every family event. The janitor who left extra snacks in the computer lab when he knew I was working late at night. They had all seen me. I had not been as invisible as I had believed. The next morning, I stood before CryptoShield's latest batch of interns, including several foundation scholars. As I looked at their eager faces, I thought about what to tell them. 5 years ago, my parents told me to take the subway to my MIT graduation while they bought my sister a Mercedes. They saw my competence as evidence I did not need support, my achievements as proof I did not deserve celebration. That subway ride could have broken me. Instead, it became the foundation of everything I built. But here's what I want you to understand. You should not have to be neglected to become strong. You should not have to be ignored to find your worth. You should not have to take the subway to your graduation to eventually build a billion-dollar company. Some of you come from families who celebrate your every success. Cherish that. Others come from families who cannot see your light, no matter how brightly you shine. Know that their blindness says nothing about your luminosity. Build your own definition of success. Find your chosen family. Believe in your worth, even when, especially when, others cannot see it. And when you succeed, reach back and lift others who are taking their own subway rides to their own graduations. As I finished speaking, I saw understanding in their eyes. Some nodded with recognition of their own neglected journeys. Others listened with empathy for struggles they had been fortunate to avoid. Later, standing in my office, I looked at the antique telescope one last time before having it packed for donation. Through the window, Boston Harbor stretched endlessly, no longer a view I had earned, but simply a view I enjoyed. My phone showed a text from Avelina. "Thank you for showing me I could be more than their favorite." Another from Linnea. "Thank you for showing me that chosen family is real family." One from Professor Zephyr. "Thank you for exceeding even my highest expectations." And finally, surprisingly, one from Cyprian. "Thank you for becoming who you are despite our failures. Your mother and I are learning to see you now. Late, but hopefully not too late." I typed back, "Not too late, just in time for whatever comes next." Because that was the truth. The girl who took the subway to graduation was gone, replaced by a woman who knew her worth regardless of who recognized it. The parents who could not see past their own limitations were learning to look deeper. The sister who had been trapped in a golden cage had found her wings. And me? I had discovered that the greatest revenge is not proving others wrong, but proving yourself right. Every doubt they had harbored, every support they had withheld, every achievement they had ignored, all of it had forged me into someone unbreakable. The subway ride to graduation had not been a punishment. It had been the beginning of my real journey, one that led not just to financial success, but to something far more valuable, the unshakable knowledge of my own worth. Some people need their parents to drive them to their destinations. Others learn to find their own way. And sometimes, just sometimes, that lonely journey leads to places beyond anyone's imagination. If you're taking your own subway ride right now, feeling unseen and undervalued, know this: your journey is valid. Your struggles are real. Your worth is inherent. And one day, you will look back on that solitary ride, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the strength it built within you. The greatest success is not measured in billions or recognition. It is measured in the moment you stop needing others to tell you that you are enough. because you always were. You just needed to see it for yourself.